Now we're live. I'm sorry I showed the mugs by accident. That was not a plug that I meant to do, but go buy mugs.
Better than showing your jugs?
Oh, wow. This is getting off to a rough start. All right. Well, welcome back to Star Trek Pros and Cons with A.K.A. Bog and Captain 1701. Oh, well, thanks for hopping on, man. I totally forgot to do the audio check. But say something real quick.
What's going on?
All right, you're good. Yeah, all right. So just a recap for Star Trek, what Shuffle Trek. This is our Shuffle Trek series where every week we watch a random episode of Star Trek. Last week we picked a specific one because of an upcoming video game. This week it was totally random, and what's awesome is we picked one with a steam train in it. I work,
Another TNG.
yeah, which I know you're less enthusiastic about, but hey, I'm actually enjoying the crew.
No. Let me explain my point. I am not. I love watching TNG. Love TNG crew. They're the OGs. Besides Enterprise crew, but not Star Trek Enterprise, but OS crew.
They're my OGs because I watched TNG before I watched TOS.
Fair enough. But I feel like we've watched 12 TNG episodes.
Yeah, that's fair.
I want to see some new faces. But this episode was awesome. I actually really liked this one. I hadn't watched it in a long time, so I'm glad it came up.
Yeah, this was what was this? Emergence was the name, right?
Plus, it was this. Yeah, Emergence, and it was a season 7 episode. I think it was this third to last episode.
Dude, it was
of the series.
It was totally, and that was kind of fun. Because the way I do this too, I wasn't sure until I just pulled up the episode name and I had to go figure it out. And I was like, oh, TNG. Oh, this is right near the end. And I jumped in, of course. And like the very first scene, of course, is like Data sitting there performing Shakespeare for Picard on the holodeck, which was actually a really cool scene. It was really good. I enjoyed.
Data looked awesome.
Yeah, dude.
With the long hair and like a wizard.
TNG at its peak. They had all the costuming down. They had all the sets. Everything was like, it's right near the end, dude. It's really top notch. All of the ship shots and the effect shots with the particles and everything were really good. The holodeck looked awesome. Dude, it was a really good episode. And
I thought too, interestingly, since it was kind of the last season with like 3 episodes left, I feel like they're like, we still have some money to play with in the budget. Why don't we just spend some cash on some sets that we've never really done before?
Right, and or they went and shot on in a train car somewhere or something. I wouldn't be surprised to find it that was shot on location at somewhere. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I initially, when I thought we started off with a holodeck episode, I was like, oh, this is near the end. They're saving money for all good things. You know what I mean? But you're right, because this had specific effect shots that were really nice and from different angles and different, lighting, and that we had the Enterprise shut down, and powered down and stuff. And so, one of the cool things for me is honestly, the last time that I really went through and watched all of TNG was on my aunt's VHS set, and so for me, this is because I've watched a few episodes here and there, streaming this and that, but actually going through and watching them with the full HD updates, because even the last time I was watching a lot of TNG was before we got the full conversions, the remasters, and they are gorgeous, man. The show looks great.
And sometimes with the remasters too, I don't know if they did so much in TNG, but in TOS they added scenes.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look, but basically, in order to upscale a series for Blu-ray, it's expensive because you have the film. And you can go through and you can scan the film at a higher resolution, and then you just re-edit it to the same edits as the original, right? But for the effect shots that aren't actually on film, as a finished effect, you know what I mean? Those ones you have to go back through and redo effectively at the upscaled rate. And so that maybe that is part of it, is maybe these are like totally redone. Like, I don't really care. I thought it looked awesome.
Totally.
And so we
Cool.
start off with this cool like interaction with Picard and Dane. Like you said, the makeup looked awesome, and Picard like tells him, is like kind of zoned out, and he's like, I can't even see you, man. And like he ups the lighting, and Picard's like, that's much better, you know. And then all of a sudden they see this weird light, and he's like, what's that? And they're like, I don't know, dude. And you hear the whistle, and it's a steam train, which immediately I was like, this is awesome, because if people don't know already from watching us previously, I work at a museum with steam locomotives. In fact, all day today I was filming steam locomotives. And so that was awesome. And they mentioned too that it's from Crusher's holodeck program, which I thought was funny. And you know, we that kind of leads us into that interaction between Picard and Crusher, which was, this is the end of the series where they have kind of fleshed out this little back and forth, you know, and they kind of have a little scene where he's like, oh, I had no idea you were interested in trains, which I'm gonna have to short clip that and use that for all sorts of ridiculous memeing purposes. But she's like, oh, you know, for me, it's more about the travel and they're meeting different people and they have, and the romance and everything. And there's kind of like this nice little Crusher Picard scene, and that was cool.
He's, he's like, she's like, you don't know about the Orient Express? He's like, of course I know about the Orient
Oh,
Express.
you know, yeah.
Oh, I'm Picard. I know all.
So I like that. I thought that was fun. Um,
Um, but and now that we know kind of their history,
right.
like kind of the flirtation stuff that we find out earlier, and part that may have led up to a little Jack Crusher.
Yeah, right. You know, hey, Jack knows has heard some stories, right? So I like this one. And then it kind of just like went on, and it's like a normal day. They're doing some scans and checking out this, and it's all very boring.
Well, they're doing they're surveying for new Federation colonies.
I just say they're doing a survey. It was pretty basic. I say day to day normal business. Thank you for pointing out. But yeah, you're right. And then we get a surprise warp, you know, right? And they're trying to figure out what's going on, and then they come out of warp, and then all of a sudden they mention, oh, there was a theta radiation buildup, and we don't normally scan for that, you know. And it's like, oh, it's a good thing if we were there for 1.8 seconds longer, our warp core would have exploded. And I'm like, uh, maybe you should scan for theta radiation more frequently or whatever it was, because it sounds like that's kind of dangerous.
The ship just blows up out of the
Oh,
blue.
2 seconds. Oh no, you know, I was like, I was like, oh my God, what are you guys? They're like, oh, well, good thing we just randomly warped out of there then. And they're like, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that is pretty weird. That is a little suspicious, you know. And, as yeah, my note is scan for, and then it just says they would have blown up, you know, and like, and then
What if
that's the title cut.
what if it was what if it was like the ship blows up and it's like you're like, well, guess TNG is over.
Dude, you know, like I'm gonna have to recycle my Death Star explosion for something with it. Ah, man, I'm gonna have to meme the heck out of this episode. Um,
Good one.
we come back and we see like Geordi and Data going through the good old Jeffrey tubes, man. Like, I love seeing the ship as like a real ship. And one of the things I hate about Discovery, and I'm gonna lampoon it every time, is like when they pulled back out of the turbo lift and it was like inside of a star base, dude. It didn't even make any sense. And so, like, actually had going back to core like Jeffrey tubes, that's such a like core thing too from like the '90s, like Star Trek.
What I thought this episode did too was kind of make the ship a character.
Dude, so I've got a lot of thoughts about that, honestly. Um, you know, I've got so many notes, but I would rather just kind of talk about that a little bit. We go through this whole process, you know. It's like they mentioned that they were infected by some recent anomaly or something, right, you know, and they're trying to like deactivate it. And just this interaction, it becomes real apparent real quick that something's going on, you know. And They mentioned that the Enterprise is like it's evolving and developing a neural net. I think is what Data says, and so they show those like scans between like the human brain and like Data's positronic net and what's developing. And I thought that was
Yeah,
super cool.
they all look like trees. Did you know that?
Yeah, as I
That's pretty
say,
neat.
so I don't know how. I know you're probably not familiar with the comic book that is so all right. They did a series of books that is supposed to be the run of JJ Kirk, his 5 year mission. It was like a 5 year long run of books. It's 60 books long. It's pretty solid actually. And it's kind of cool because they like show them interacting, like JJ's version of them interacting with some of the classic episodes, but it's like the new twist and everything. So it's kind of cool. And in particular, one of the issues that takes place is the Enterprise, the JJ Enterprise, becomes sentient and uses the teleporter or replicator system to create a synthezoid like humanoid that looks like a crew member. And he like is on the bridge, and they're like actually able to interact directly with the ship, like give him orders, and it's the ship. And so it's very much, I watched this episode, I'm like, oh my god, the comic book ripped off Emergence, because this definitely came out before the comic. But it really makes me want to go back and read that particular arc of the comic and do a review, because I think it's only 2 issues, right? And so it had this concept in there. And then when you go to, and the thing is, it actually broke the JJ continuity, because of course they don't care. And this is supposed to take place after, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was like how did this crew member join? But you see this character in the JJ movies. There's a pan and you can see his like cybertronic brain, and he's like this ghostly pale, like
Oh, is he
albino.
the white kind of character on the
Dude, that
bridge?
is the Enterprise. I'm not even
Oh,
kidding you. So that's it's kind of cool watching this episode and then knowing that comic too. So I wanted to mention that because it's very similar, but it's
interesting. I didn't
done
even know
differently.
that.
And it's like a cool little Easter egg when you watch the JJ movie. When you see that character, that's actually supposed to be the Enterprise's synthezoid avatar.
That's
It
super
is the
meta.
ship itself. So I thought that was kind of cool,
That's like
and it gave me an
that's super.
awesome like way to bring up the comic books for this episode.
One of the cool, like, kind of going off the ship being a character concepts. It's like, it's like the ship kind of gives birth to life form.
Dude, and
It's like
like I
when they're
thought that
going
was really
through,
cool.
and it reminds me of I mean, there's just so many tie-ins with other things, like um you know we keep referencing Picard because we've had so many Picards lately. It's like this one directly kind of influences that idea that all the ships kind of being interconnected, like how that might work. um and then if you think about Voyager with the bioneural circuitry, how that could probably develop. There's probably a Voyager episode that's similar to this one where the ship kind of develops as sentience or conscience or something. Um, I'd have to find one, but I'm sure they've done one of those.
I
But
would,
like, I think no. There was one where like it was sick. Remember, the bioneural circuits were sick, and it was
yeah.
like, I think it was like throwing off like time warps or something, and like there were 5 different time frames on the ship, and
We'll get to it. We'll
Chakotay and
get to it.
Conway,
We're talking this.
but
I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's.
but
I was gonna say, I would actually, I would not be opposed if this turned into like an issue where like every once in a while a Federation ship, and it was just like, oh shit, our ship's like becoming sentient. We gotta like let it go do this thing. They're like, yeah, remember when that happened with the Enterprise? They're like, all right, at least we know what to do. We gotta like find some like theta radiation or tetrion radiation or whatever it was.
my whole thing, like, with the character, with the ship being a character, like, the ship is the constant, is, you know, it's like a crew member on the show. I mean,
Well,
the ship is there
I liked
every
as
single
soon
episode.
as they like had a hint that that might be happening too. They were like, "All right, guys, we got to go like figure out what's going on, but we also got to make sure we're not damaging these things because it's a possible life form. And we have to." I was gonna say
Right.
I wrote the note down. It's like we must respect its like individuality or something. We have a responsibility to respect it if it's there's a
Yeah, yeah.
possibility it's a new being, which is like such
Prime
a
directive.
classic like Star Trek TNG thing, dude. And I thought
Rather
it
than
was awesome.
pull out a phaser and just blow it away immediately.
We're getting deep into it, so I'm going to go through just a couple of my favorite notes real fast. When they were trying to mess with the train, they're like, "Don't ask us." They were like, "What are you doing here? You don't have any tickets. Get off the train." And then the engineer came out and was like, "Look, guys, they're just trying to help, okay?" Like, and which was cool because it was like an aspect of their neural net, like trying to defend them or help them or whatever, you know. And
Is
then
it
you
like
get
kind of
the
new?
yeah,
Like, I know these
exactly.
guys.
And then the mobster pops out and like shoots him. And is like, "Ka-cha!" And they're like, "Who's running this train?" "I am." You know.
Were you hoping at some point Worf would fight that knight?
Kind of thought that the knight did attack him at one point, but the most
I mean,
menacing he got was they surrounded him. I was, that would have
I
been
know I've
cool.
watched I know I've watched this episode several times before,
At least two or
um,
three, yeah. I've
but
seen it,
yeah, I was like,
yeah.
wouldn't you have loved to see Worf just like in that night, just chilling on him? And then I like too when I think of the second time they go on the ship and they meet with and Troy is on there. He notices like something's just kind of off because the guy's playing cards with the one guy who's tied up. They're working on the puzzle and they don't know what the puzzle is. And
I
then you've got the woman standing next to the knight, and she's like, I forgot, was she like hitting his helmet or something? It was just kind of like glitching out,
Yeah,
just kind
she
of
was
like.
totally glitching out. You're right, exactly.
I
Um
thought that was interesting.
they had this whole like conversation about the emergent property, you know. I thought that was
Yeah,
really good. With Troy, I liked. Well, I guess that's later. Yeah, she was like, "I want to go in and see." I thought this was actually a really good Troy episode. Uh, we had
about time.
we had stuff with Data, we had some stuff with Worf, we had some awesome because like the Data and Picard scene was great. We had some really good Picard scenes where he was like very very Picardy, you know what I mean? And
What's cool, like, uh, we finally get a Troy episode where she's not like being mentally violated by someone.
well, it's been the end of the series too, and she's had her command and she's in the uniform thanks to Jellicoe, and
Yeah,
you know what
right.
I mean. I thought it was an excellent Troy episode. And then it's like we're going back to the holodeck because it's some kind of focal point, and they're like doing the emergency brake, which derailed the train, and then the train was magically re-railed. Which I love all this stuff. I'm going to clip so many of these together to use at the museum for I don't know what yet, but it's too awesome with like Worf like shoveling coal and like Data coming in and like working the controls and everything. Um, and they're kind of figuring it out, but they also realize they have to maybe be able to turn it off because there's some risk and everything involved. And so they're like, they're heading back and like I like that they're trying to access or they're working with the characters and they're like getting all kind of like standoffy and they're like, hey, you don't have tickets, remember? And they see the guy get off the train. They're like, we're just gonna follow him. And there's the
The
whole
mobster with
like,
the brick.
yeah, dude, which I thought was funny. They get off the steam train into and
Keystone
come out
City.
from a subway, and of course they've
That's
got,
definitely the Paramount bet.
oh
Like,
yeah,
we have this whole cityscape that hundreds of movies and TV shows have been shot on. It's just like
you recognize it, yeah. It's
it's
been
cool.
used a few
Like,
times.
it's cool seeing. It's kind of, it gives you a glimpse into like how television and movies were made back in the day. Like, a lot of movies and TV shows basically use the same sets,
Yeah,
and they would just either the camera would be shot different, or they'd use a different part of the set.
If they ever
But
did
like you don't see
anything
that.
different, how many times do you
Yeah,
need the city block to be
right.
different, bro?
You don't right, and you don't see movies and TV that way anymore. It's always like,
Well, because now
shot in another
in
way.
those they use that like Force-scape technology, the full screen or
Totally.
whatever, and they call that the volume screen or whatever it is, and that can be useful, and I get why they developed it, but you lose something when you're not shooting in a physical environment, 100% for sure.
I mean, like that just speaks to how really cool this episode was. Like, just using all these great sets to their advantage, and it was just like it was just really cool. Like a ton of
Well,
cool stuff.
and specifically this said, dude, they have the like whole taxi thing with Data, while like Troy and them are following this mobster, and he puts in the brick, and we're building the foundation.
Right.
But I love that they cut back to Data, and he's like, "Oh, we were having a problem for a minute there, but I got it figured out." And it like pans over, and he's just sitting there holding the taxi, and the guy's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god!" And he's like,
Right.
"I'm ready to depower this." And so they try, and they realize real quick that it causes the earthquake in the holodeck, and then shaking on the ship. While Jordy's like scanning this device in the cargo bay, and they mention it depressurized, but everyone was able to get out safely. And they tell him, "Stop what you're doing, Data. It's interfering." You know what I mean? And I like that they're like, "Okay, let's go back and have a meeting." And you know what I mean? And it's like, I like that there's like discussion in the TNG, and not everything is this hectic action. Like they even have a deadline. They're like, "We're working against the clock. We're running out of oxygen or whatever. And
Yeah. No one's crying. No one's like flipping out.
you know,
Um, the other cool thing too about this, about the specific holodeck characters, um, they all have a kind of a level of naivete
yeah,
because they're just being born basically. They're
there are
starting to
aspects of a personality
right.
that's just fundamentally like blossoming. And it is. It's like each one is almost a different aspect.
It's cool. Like it's just
They
really good.
mention how like it's using the replicators with the transporters in mysterious ways to like build this thing that's like trying to create energy. And my note is like, then Troy almost got crushed. And we go to sick bay, and there's a nice scene with Troy, and she's like, "I want to go back in," and they're like, "The safeties are off. This is very dangerous. You weren't hurt seriously this time, but you could be." And she's like, "I feel like I've got to get in there." And I thought it was an excellent Troy episode. And this time, I like how Picard turns to me. He's like, "Perhaps this time we go in and try and help." And so they go in, and it shows the conductor. And we looked up his name. Let me
Yeah.
see here. What was it? It was I don't even know. It was David Huddleston, I think. And he's been like 150
Big
actor
Lebowski.
credits. Yeah, Big Lebowski and some awesome stuff. Great cameo. And he pops in, and he's like, oh, and yeah, there we go. That I goofed up our broadcast for 1 second, but it was very brief, so sorry. That was actually a Fortnite code if anybody wants to use that. But it's probably already been used, but that's what that was. Anyways, uh,
Surprise Fortnite code.
yeah, no kidding. I love that was from my video on my channel earlier. But so I love the cameo. I love that he's like all like ready to stop him, and then they pull out tickets, and I'm like, I love this show, man. I love that it's like they're doing different things and they're thinking, and you know,
Because if you
um,
think about it, like if you compare it to newer Star Trek, like they would have approached this situation totally different.
yeah,
There wouldn't be like the diplomatic democratic discussion. There wouldn't be like the working through the problem. They would have either just like
they
broken
probably would
down,
have
or they would,
broken a phaser and started shooting things.
yeah, like come on. It's like this is what made TNG so great, was like it was it was so dependent on everyone coming together to come to the best solution.
Well, all right, so like I love that. My next note is just Worf is gonna fire. And dude, I love that it's like dims, and they're like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, we really need some big arms to help up in the engine with." And I'm like, "Dude, that's awesome." And Data's like, "Go with them, dude," you know. And so Worf's just like gives him the like grumpy scowl and is like, "All right," you know, and just follows him off. And we totally get to see Worf like firing coal, which I'm gonna clip the heck out of, and like. We see the ship arrive at this white dwarf, this like star, this new city they've been talking about, this place that has
Was it
all you can eat. Yeah, Verderon
Verderon
City.
City?
Yeah, they've got all you can. The restaurant, best food you want. They've got all you can
No,
eat.
it was Vert City, and
Yes,
they needed it was the Verderon radiation, which this life form fed off of.
right. And so they like, but they were wrong. They were on the wrong track this whole time. They like absorbed all of it from the star before they could like bring this life all the way up, you know, or all the way aware. And they're like, well, it's life, it's fading. We only have, you know, a little bit of time. And then again, the ship like does its thing and starts flying off for a new location. But there's problems because they're at warp 9. All power has been diverted to the engines, including life support. And they only got 2 hours left, but this star is 12 hours away. So now they're like, now this is going to be a problem. And they discuss their options, and they're like, well, let's send them back in, and we're going to see if we can do this and disable them without damaging them, or, you know, we need to get control of the ship. And I like that the way that they do it. We see them derail at this point and get back on. And I like that Picard's like to ask Jordy, you know, is there an artificial source? And it's like, oh, you know, and they start working it out. And we get back to them talking about either a pulsar or nebula, and it gives Jordy a nice little scene because we did see him get an explosion in the face that usually kills the red shirts, but you know he's like,
Yeah.
oh man, whew, good thing I'm okay. I guess I wasn't that close. That looked pretty big, but you know it wasn't that bad.
Hey, there's still 2 episodes in the series. They're
I
not going
know,
to take
right?
out.
That would have been brutal. That would have been a brutal trick. And he's like, I can't film that last episode. I'm feeling sick. And they're like, oh, sorry, we're gonna just kill you off now.
We'll write you out.
But so it gave him the choice there, and he picks the nebula. And then I like that. How does Data take over the train? He goes and explains that he wants to help them and that he knows a shorter route. And there's like an interaction between two of the aspects of the being. Like, we can't trust him, and like he's trying to help us. Like, if it is shorter, we're already behind schedule. And they like the being, the Enterprise, who's like the sum of their, like, as Picard states at the end, the sum of their logs, their experiences, their records, their scans, and everything. He's like, it decides, well, let's trust them. And so Data's able to slow the train down and redirect it, and we
Well,
get to
plus,
the
too, like,
nebula.
how many times has Data just directly interfaced with the Enterprise?
Right? So he's not totally unfamiliar, right?
Right.
And so they launch this modified torpedo, and I love it. It cuts back to the train. They're like, oh, "He's right. We're at New Vert City. We made it!" And they're all like celebrating and everything. And it shows like the beam, drawing all this power, and everything. And then my note there is also F that nebula. Nobody needs that nebula. And I know that we've seen living nebulas and stuff, but so it seems a little happenstance. So they're just like fire a torpedo at that thing and blow it up. But whatever, you know. They're scanned in.
Could
They're
be
like,
like
oh yeah,
octopus babies.
that's a useless nebula. We can blow that shit up.
There could be octopus babies,
And you get the
space
life
whales.
form like floating, and it's like it's cheesy graphics, but for the
Oh
time it
yeah,
was like, whoa, that's pretty good because there's like they were doing pretty good at that point. And you actually see it leave through the Enterprise, which is cool. It's a nice exterior shot. And you actually I was gonna say, let's see here. Yeah, they have this scene where it's like showing the the actual holodeck, and everyone's having a celebration, and like everybody, Troy and Worf and Data are all like toasting champagne and celebrating with them when they all like fade, you know, and they're like left by themselves. And I thought that was actually a really cool shot. I like that because
Um,
they did it. Mission success. Way to go. Good team up, guys. You know, I thought that was
Saved a
cool.
life. We like watched a life form being, and
Well,
Crusher made the point like, sometimes all a life form's lifespan is all based upon reproduction.
right, and pointing out like that was and that was kind of a cool moment too. It's like, oh, the Enterprise like evolved into this being, and its entire purpose was to create this new thing, and then that was it. You know, I thought that
And it
was
was
interesting too.
it was also red, yellow, and blue. And there's red, yellow, and blue kind of
The
on the
primary
Enterprise,
colors.
right?
Well, yeah, it's like all colors are made up of those three.
Yeah.
So it's like some very base level stuff. It's very cool. Um, and it's yeah, I like it. Yeah, dude, it was a good episode,
That's
a nice
one of the cool.
culmination.
One of the other things that we have been talking about. It's like with the I don't know if they were going for this, but I kind of took from it with the you look at the technology progression. You go from steam trains all the way up to this like warp capable spaceship. It was cool to see Data like being able to control the Enterprise as it was like a 19th century steam engine. Um,
Yeah,
I thought that was cool. I don't know if it meant anything.
it's a nice way to like wrap up the series too. It's like it's a well placed episode too. And the final scene is Data comes in to talk to Picard and invite him to his performance of a scene from The Tempest. And Picard asks him which scene. He says, "Oh God, what was it? Pantheon? I can't even think of the guy's name, but the character's first encounter with other human beings." And Picard says, yes, I'd love to be there." And Data's like, "Oh yes, I thought that would be poignant, you know." And he turns and he stops and he asks him about Picard's risk, and he's like, "My risk," and he's like, "Yes, he took a great risk." And allowing this process to go forward. And I would like to understand your decision making. And Picard goes on to explain to him that it's part of their duty to kind of do this thing. And Data like brings up, well, it could have been very dangerous. The crew could have just been designed to destroy us. And this is where we get the explanation of Picard saying, well, it came from us. It's of our life. And I love that scene. I thought that was awesome, man. It was a really good episode, and it makes me remember why I do like episodic Trek. Generally speaking, I don't like episodic TV shows. I prefer shows that build stories over time. But the truth is, I love episodic Trek, man. And that's probably why DS9 is my favorite series, because it had a blend. You know what I mean? And we'll have to see where we go from there. Because the truth is, I really did like the latest Star Trek that I've seen, the new stuff, but didn't like a lot of the older rounds there. So I'm curious to see what we get down the road here. I'm open to more Trek, you know what I mean? And in the meantime, while we're waiting, I'm gonna just continue to enjoy watching old Trek, man. I love this stuff.
Yeah, like old. It just never. I mean, old Trek. It never gets old.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, like we said, I've probably watched this episode, at least 2 or 3 times now, and it's like,
It's still
oh yeah,
it looked great. It held up
like
excellent.
it's one of those kind of hidden gem episodes. When you see it again, you're like, oh yeah, that episode was pretty freaking dope.
Yeah, it's not one that you're like when you're like, oh, I want to watch a really cool one with some action, or really one of the best ofs, or it's not one that you're going to go to and watch a lot. And so that's one of the cool things about either doing the chronology project where you're watching them all in order, or like this where it's just picking random episodes. And dude, this was a banger. I'm giving this one a solid 9 out of 10 at least, dude. This was excellent. I really enjoyed it. Great Trek.
Oh
Maybe I'm
yeah, I'm
crazy,
gonna
but
go. I'm going 9 out of 10. That's like a classic episode level. But I agree, great episode. I'm gonna go 7.5 out of 10.
I'm going to say that part of my score is influenced by the fact that I was playing with steam trains all day long.
Fair enough. And mine is like based on, your 10 out of 10s are,
You got to save that for a good one, and yeah, I got you. I
this
got
one's
you.
definitely solid 7.5, 7 out of 10.
It's probably
Definitely
really an 8 for me with a +1 for trains.
Rewatchable for sure.
Yeah. But
Great episode.
I would say let's wind this one down so that we can go ahead and switch over and record some magic for later this week. You guys have a nice night.
Good.
Thank you for tuning in.
We'll see a Shuffle Trek next week, and maybe we'll throw in a little TOS or Voyager. Or
I was going to say we will be doing a non-TNG episode next week.
And so with Shuffle Trek, this is not going to be any of the new series. It is just exclusively Voyager, TOS, DS9, TNG, and Enterprise.
And the animated series.
Animated series.
Have you ever watched the animated series?
No,
I actually can't wait until we watch an animated series episode because it was written by a lot of the original TOS writers.
Oh, yeah.
And they intentionally wrote like follow-up episodes or episodes where they were told they couldn't do it previously because they didn't have the budget and because they were just doing a cartoon show. But there's some good stuff in there, and I think you'll like it. And TK did tune in, so I'm going to give Thornkiller a shout out for always being out there. Thank you, man. If you haven't seen this episode, you should watch it.
What up, TK? He's a longtime fan.
Yeah, I won't lie. He was at the museum with me today. He was driving trains while I was filming.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do we want to throw the classic movie Shuffle Trek, or is that another type of it? I don't see why it matters.
Consider them added in. When you say classics, you're talking like Star Trek 1 through 6.
1 through 13, up to Nemesis.
Up through Nemesis. All right, that was my follow-up question.
What, 6? Wait. So there'd be...
I was going to let you choose not to watch the TNG ones, but I like the TNG movies and would very much enjoy watching them.
I'd say we throw the movie.
When you say up through 13, are you including the JJ Treks? Because I'd watch those too. I like the JJ Treks.
I think JJ Trek is okay. It kind of verges between the new style and the old style, but it's not as egregiously.
You'll notice I am wearing a red JJ uniform, but in my case, I consider this a captain's uniform, so I say I don't care.
Oh, you're an engineer in my world. I wear the gold. Get back down in engineering.
I'm a captain too, boss. I just don't have it in my name.
Well, that's your problem.
All right. You want to wind this down, play some magic here?
Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. If you want some historical content, check